Before the story truly begins, we are introduced to a deeper idea about detectives. A detective is compared to a wave. Just like a wave, a detective crashes into a carefully built sandcastle of lies created by the criminal. And in the end, it washes everything away. No good or evil. No mercy or cruelty. Only the truth remains. Everything returns to how it should be. Then the tone shifts back to reality. If an ordinary detective is like a wave, then one man stands far beyond that. A man who doesn't just wash away the sandcastle, but swallows the entire beach itself. A tsunami. That man is Otsuki Tatsuya, the greatest detective in history, known for solving any case without fail. Then we see his son, our main character, Otsuki Sakuya. Unlike his legendary father, Sakuya lives a much more unusual life. He is calm, analytical, and somewhat detached from emotions. But there is something strange about him. He writes a will every single day. When asked why he does something so extreme, he gives a very unusual answer. He says it's just a habit, a daily routine. And if there's any reason at all, it could be something as simple as a broken shoelace or a black cat crossing his path. To him, even the smallest event might be a sign of something bigger. Then we see Sakuya interacting with his assistant, Lilithia. She informs him that his next case is ready. But before leaving, she confronts him about something personal. She questions his behavior, especially how he appears around women. She suggests that maybe he has some kind of strange effect on others, something that makes him unapproachable or even unappealing. Sakuya responds calmly, saying that if such an ability existed, he would likely have a much more exciting life. Instead, his student life is dull, gray. But his assistant doesn't fully agree. She believes his life is more interesting than he admits. Then we see her closely observing him. She notices something unusual. His uniform carries the scent of disinfectant and medicine, along with a faint but distinct fragrance. After analyzing carefully, she identifies it. The smell comes from the school infirmary, and the perfume is an expensive brand, far beyond what a normal student could afford. This leads to suspicion. She believes Sakuya may have been involved in something questionable, but Sakuya quickly explains himself. He insists it was all a misunderstanding. He claims he simply got injured, and the school nurse treated him. Since his injury was visible, the nurse performed a proper medical examination, nothing more. He even emphasizes that it was strictly medical. No improper behavior took place. However, his explanation does not help much. In fact, it only makes things sound more suspicious. His assistant remains unconvinced. She continues to question him, suggesting that his story may not be entirely honest. Still, despite her doubts, she remains loyal. She believes it is her duty to watch over Sakuya, to make sure he does not stray from the right path, because she is not just an assistant. She is his partner in being a detective. Then we see a clearer bond between them. She acknowledges her role proudly. She is the assistant to a detective, and she intends to support him no matter what happens. Then Sakuya's assistant proudly states that she is the assistant of Detective Otsuki Sakuya. To her, being recognized as part of the detective world is something meaningful. But Sakuya responds honestly. Even though she calls him a detective, his own father does not yet consider him a full-fledged one. He still isn't treated as an equal. Then we see the assistant make a bold suggestion. She says that if neither of them is considered complete on their own, then together they can be one complete detective, two halves becoming one. But before anything else can be discussed, a major piece of news arrives. Sakuya's father has already left for an emergency assignment. An airplane has been hijacked. Lilithia informs him that the hijacked aircraft was scheduled to fly from Singapore's Changi International Airport to Japan. The passengers and crew are trapped inside, 179 people being held hostage. And the most shocking detail? The hijacker is a 9-year-old girl. This immediately changes everything. A situation this extreme is not something ordinary detectives can handle. That's why Sakuya's father, Otsuki Tatsuya, the strongest detective, is the one called in. Then, we see Sakuya shift the conversation back to his own situation. He mentions that he already has a scheduled job, a rather simple one, an infidelity investigation. Compared to a hijacking case, this feels almost too ordinary. Safe, low risk, but his assistant doesn't approve. She believes Sakuya should aim higher. A real detective should chase ambitious cases, something bigger, like locked room murders in old mansions, or serial killings on isolated islands. But Sakuya immediately rejects the idea. He has no interest in dangerous cases like that. He prefers something simple, something that doesn't risk his life. Then, we see the details of his current case. The target is a man named Kaoruta Makoto, a 43-year-old man working at a film distribution company. He has produced several hit films and is considered successful in the industry. But recently, something about him has become suspicious. He has been making unusual purchases, and there are signs that he has secretly rented an apartment in Tokyo. Naturally, this raises questions. Why would a successful man suddenly need a separate residence? Then, we see the location of the case, Yokohama, and more specifically, a massive cruise ship, the Queen Ailey. This ship is no ordinary vessel. It is one of the largest cruise ships in Japan, carrying over 1,000 passengers and crew members. A floating world filled with luxury, entertainment, and countless hidden secrets. The purpose of Karuta's presence on the ship becomes clear. He is here for a promotional project, a collaboration involving a travel company and a new film. The film features a rising actress, Hagamine Eureka. She is a newly selected lead actress with very little acting experience. Despite that, she has been given a major role, making her presence on this project highly important. Then, we see the connection between Kaoruta and the film industry deepen. This cruise is not just for travel, it is part of a marketing strategy. The journey itself is used as part of the film's promotion, with the actress being interviewed and featured during the trip. Meanwhile, Sakuya is not here to enjoy the cruise. He is here to investigate. Then, we see him encounter another familiar individual, a man who recognizes him and knows his father as well. This man immediately senses the situation. He understands that being around Sakuya often leads to trouble, and if Sakuya's father were present, things would be even more dangerous. However, Sakuya reassures him, his father is not here. He has already left for another urgent case, the hijacking incident. With that confirmation, the man feels slightly relieved. At least for now, the situation on the ship won't escalate into something extreme. Still, he acknowledges Sakuya's situation. Being the son of a legendary detective is not easy. Sakuya's acquaintance comments that it must be difficult dealing with him, calling him a wayward son, and joking that he can introduce a good lawyer anytime. It's a light remark, but it carries a subtle hint, a reminder that Sakuya's life is always being observed, always being judged in comparison to his father. Then, we see a shift in the evening atmosphere. The ship is preparing for a performance, a show is about to begin, and the assistant calls out to Sakuya, telling him it's time. As the night unfolds, we see guests gathering, the atmosphere becoming more lively and filled with anticipation. But Sakuya remains focused. His assistant reminds him not to lose sight of the target while being distracted by the performance. Sakuya responds calmly. He says he has no interest in the circus or entertainment. To him, it's just noise, something unnecessary. But his assistant gently disagrees. She suggests that sometimes enjoying the thrill is important. Not everything needs deep thinking. Even children can understand simple enjoyment. Just experiencing the moment can be enough. Then we see a small but strange detail during the performance. A clown appears on stage, but something feels off. One of the clowns has tears painted on his face, a crying expression, frozen into makeup, but others do not. This leads to a small observation between Sakuya and others around him. The difference between the clowns becomes noticeable, and the atmosphere subtly shifts again, because now even something as simple as a performance begins to feel suspicious. Then we see a conversation about relationships between Katsuragi and some people. Sakuya is observed by someone who points out that he never seems to interact with women one-on-one. He remains distant, almost completely detached. A joking comment comes from his assistant, suggesting that the person he might be involved with doesn't necessarily have to be human. But Sakuya dismisses it calmly. He doesn't entertain such ideas. Then, we see a moment from his past. Sakuya recalls how he met his assistant, Lilithia. She was involved in a case his father once worked on. After that incident, she had nowhere to go, and eventually she came to their detective office. Since then, she has remained connected to them. Now, we are introduced to another spectacle on the ship, a dangerous attraction called the Globe of Death, a massive metal sphere where motorcycles race inside at high speed, a performance that combines danger and precision, a place where one mistake could mean death. Sakuya, however, doesn't see it as entertainment. To him, it's simply reckless, danger disguised as a show. Meanwhile, he assigns his assistant to continue monitoring the target. He himself decides to gather information from the people on board. Before they separate, a warning is given. Lilithia says they must not fall for the distractions of the luxurious and glamorous environment. The cruise is full of entertainment, but their mission is more important. Sakuya confidently responds. He says he will not be distracted. He understands his role clearly. Then, we see Sakuya moving through the ship. He is calm, observing everything around him carefully. His focus remains sharp. Next, Sakuya was in the men's washroom. Suddenly, something unexpected happens. A young woman appeared there, and she is clearly embarrassed. She quickly realizes the situation she's in, and Sakuya also understands something is wrong. She apologizes repeatedly, explaining how she ended up there. She was searching for a missing cat. The cat's name is Ruru. It belongs to the film producer, Karuta, the same man Sakuya is investigating. Then, she takes him to her room and explains that she heard a cat's voice coming from inside an air duct. Trying to help, she climbed into the duct to search for it. But suddenly, the ceiling broke open, and she ended up falling into the wrong place. Despite the awkward situation, she begins explaining everything clearly. Ruru is a beloved cat owned by Karuta. He is known to be a big cat lover. That's why he brought the cat on the ship during the cruise. But now, one of the cats has gone missing. Then, we see something important. This girl is not just a random passenger. She is the lead actress of the movie, Hagamine Eureka. She admits something honest. She is not searching for the cat because she was asked to. She is doing it on her own because she genuinely cares. Sakuya notices this immediately. Her behavior shows determination, sincerity, and perhaps something deeper. Then, we see Sakuya make a decision. He agrees to take on the request. He will help her find the missing cat. And just like that, the situation expands once again. What started as a simple cruise investigation has now turned into something more complex. A missing cat. Sakuya agrees to take the case, and the girl thanks him sincerely, showing a respectful and growing master-disciple relationship. Sakuya thinks he doesn't really see her as a proper disciple, but he admits that staying close to her could help him learn more about Kurita. Then, we see the girl reveal that she is acting in a movie as a high school detective named Yuzumura. She explains that searching for the cat is actually part of her acting preparation, because she wants to perform well in her first leading role. Despite being nervous, she is serious about becoming a good actress and is willing to learn through real-life experience. Sakuya allows her to continue and tells her to act freely, showing that he trusts her judgment. The assistant promises to stay safe and not take unnecessary risks, while also worrying about Sakuya's safety. Then, we see Sakuya searching for a missing cat named Ruru, calling out its name while exploring the ship. He asks a worker about the cat, and the worker suggests it might be in the warehouse area where mice sometimes appear. Then, we see him enter the warehouse, continuing his search more carefully. As he explores, he starts noticing something strange and begins to feel that something is not right. Then, we see him discover a suspicious scene. A man's body is hanging there, and the man probably had died, which leads him to think like a detective instead of just searching for a cat. He analyzes the situation and starts questioning whether the scene is staged or not. Then, we see him realize that something serious has happened, and he immediately contacts Lilithia. Then, he examines the scene carefully, quickly understanding that this is not a normal situation. He notices inconsistencies in the positioning of the body and begins analyzing whether it is truly a suicide. Then, we see him conclude that the evidence suggests it might be murder, not suicide. Just then, he finds a phone there which he picks up and tries to unlock. But then, something unexpected happens. Someone stabbed him from behind, making him lay down. This is the same clown who has tears painted on his face. Then, he leaves from there. Here, we see Sakuya realizes how dangerous this job is, understanding that detectives deal with life and death situations. Sakuya also reflects on how dangerous this profession can be. Just as he is about to die, his assistant Lilithia comes there and tries to wake him up, but he doesn't. Lilithia says, "Died again, Mr. Detective." This is where the episode ends here.